Now to the latest with the attempt to form a bipartisan commission to investigate the January 6th assault on the U.S. Capitol. On Friday, only 6 Republicans voted in favor of establishing a commission. Senators Bill Cassidy, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Rob Portman, Mitt Romney, and Ben Sasse. And so the vote fell short of the 60-vote threshold needed to advance the legislation. Gladys Sicknick, the mother of fallen U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, met with several Republican lawmakers ahead of the vote last week. She said she was disappointed Senate Republicans blocked the January 6th commission. And here is how she described those meetings.
It was tense, and we just made believe, you know, everything was fine, and we were very nice to them, for the most part.
Well, it was just tense because
we knew, I think because we knew they weren't sincere. They weren't sincere.
And they didn't want to get to the bottom of what happened.
No, and I don't understand it. They are elected for us, the people, and they don't care about that. They care about money, I guess, their pocketbooks. So they'll be in front of the cameras when they feel like it, and they just don't care. And it's not right.
Joining us now, former Republican Congresswoman Barbara Comstock of Virginia. She accompanied Gladys Sicknick for those meetings with Republican senators. Also with us, former Defense Secretary and former Republican Senator Chuck Hagel of Nebraska. Last week, he wrote an op-ed urging his former colleagues to pass the legislation. And Washington Post columnist Max Boot joins us. He's a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. Princeton Eddie Glaude is with us as well.
Thank you all so much for being with us. Mr. Secretary, why do you believe a bipartisan bicameral commission is so important?
Well, Joe, it's the only way for this country, for all Americans, to understand why January 6th happened. What were the influences? Who were involved? I mean, we had active duty military involved, National Guard, veterans, policemen, people from all walks of life in this country. This was an historic event. It never happened before. The American people deserve an honest, independent evaluation to tell us what happened, to get to the bottom of it. And you can't do it just by the Congress or by committees. It has to be a 9/11 type commission, a Warren type commission, independent of the Congress, half Republican, half Democrat. That's why we need it. That's what I think the Senate failed in doing a couple of days ago. And I think it's shameful that they did not, the Republicans did not put the interests of this country ahead of their own Republican political partisan issues, Donald Trump.
So, Mr. Secretary, like Barbara, like myself, you have worked closely with many of these colleagues, former colleagues of yours and of Barbara's and of mine. These are people that we were on the same side of a lot of arguments about, getting to the bottom of many things. Especially Barbara and I were on the Government Reform and Oversight Committee together. Could you imagine in your time any party, but especially my former at least Republican Party, killing a commission to figure out what happened when there was an attempt at an insurrection on January the 6th?
No, it's really irresponsible. And as I said, it's shameful because the interest of this country was at play here. And that was really the only issue that should have been forefront for each of the senators who voted. This is not about Republicans, not a Democratic issue. It's about an American issue. What the hell happened? And they failed. They failed miserably. I hope it comes back. I don't know what procedures that the Democrats, Schumer has to obviously try to regain some vote or some commission that they can put back together. But it was a dark day in the United States Senate. They failed this country.
You know, Barbara, it's interesting. We showed a clip earlier of Congressman McCall saying that there was no widespread voter fraud in Texas, but it's just the optics. And a lot of people really really think that the election was rigged. Of course, they think the election was rigged because that's a message that his party and his president was pushing for 6 months. Now we find ourselves in a situation where there was an opportunity to have a bipartisan, bicameral commission to study this, and instead we're going to be hearing from Republicans for the next 2 years about Nancy Pelosi's biased investigation or Chuck Schumer's biased investigation. It seems, again, that, you burn down the village and then you complain about the after effect of it.
Well, as you know from our investigations, documents tell the story regardless of who subpoenas them, whether it's phone records or travel records. The records of people who've already been charged. And I would, of course, today is Memorial Day. So Brian Sicknick, who is lying in Arlington National Cemetery because he was fighting to protect all of these members of Congress. I would like to ask all Americans to say a prayer for him and his beautiful mother and his partner, Sandra, who were so powerful in speaking to the senators about why we needed that commission. And it was because they understood that this can happen again, that this is still a real threat. And the people who were there that day, the people who attacked Brian with bear spray and were, as he was fighting for hours, hand-to-hand combat, they were Trump supporters. They were very long-standing, known Trump supporters. The same thing with Officer Michael Fanone, who accompanied us, who was assaulted with his own stun gun 12 times in the back of his neck, traumatic brain injury. He had a heart attack. He almost died. Daniel Rodriguez, who attacked him and who's been charged with his assault, was a known, Trump rally attender, very active in Trump supporting, and they don't want to hear that. And that is the reality. And here you have all of these Republicans who think something else happened there, when in fact, this was a Trump-inspired mob that came down there that had organized for months. And Scott MacFarlane of NBC is doing wonderful investigative work. And as you may know, Joe, he was a former staffer on the Government Reform Committee where we both served. And he's going meticulously through these charging documents. But even those documents don't show all the political connections that these people had, because that's not part of the criminal process, what their politics were. But we need to know that because of this domestic terrorism problem that is very real, that Chris Wray, the FBI director appointed by Donald Trump that I served with John Ashcroft at the Justice Department, he has told us that is a big threat. So that is why we need this commission one way or another, whether it's this commission or a bipartisan investigation in Congress. These facts are going to come out because, as you know, from all the investigations we did, when people try and stop the investigations, it may drag it out longer, but the truth comes out.